and we'll have the obligatory slide on this in a moment. Here it is. Slide's been running for like 4 years. I'm very proud of it. There's some steganography within the slide if you run it on your home computer. This is a demonstration of the very top box is the processor control region, or processor control block. It contains pointers to your current thread, your next thread, and your idle thread on the Windows architecture. Once you have the current thread, you can use that to jump to the current process. And once you're in the current process, these structures are supposed to be opaque to you. Microsoft doesn't want you to be editing them. However, WinDebug now allows you to see a lot of these structures on through their different architectures. However, they do change between service packs. So you have to download the symbols and load it up into WinDebug for each one and modify your rootkit. So here what we're going to do is there's flink and blink pointers in every single process, e-process block, and they point to the processes around us. And we're just going to change the flink and blink of our neighbors so that they point around us and therefore we disappear. So now, latest process hiding is 90210 discovered that, hey, him and along with Joanna, I suppose, said that there was all these processes have threads. The scheduling is really done at the thread level. So if we can find the threads, we can find the process, and therefore we can detect the hidden process. So 90210 decided that he wanted to even hide his threads, so he implemented his own scheduler within the kernel, and he removed himself from these thread lists that are in the Windows operating system. The FU2 by Peter Silberman and Chaos, what that did was there was a detection mechanism that would enumerate all the open process handles on the system. We'll get into that in a moment. And it was to subvert that. So FU2 modifies the PSP CID table. The PSP CID table's main purpose, whenever you see the third letter of a function or a variable name begin with a P, that's usually Microsoft private function or variable. They don't want you to use it, and it's not exported. So this is internal to the kernel itself, and it contains an open handle to every single process and every single thread on the system. What Fu2 did was it would find these handles and remove the handle from the table and therefore hide the process. The reason that some of the rootkit detectors relied upon this PSP CID table, however, it was a single point of failure for them. Once Fu2 came along and just obliterated its entry in that table as well, then the detection no longer worked. So what's the structure of a handle table? Every single handle that you get back is basically an index into your process handle table, or it could be an index into the kernel handle table. At the offset within that table that corresponds to the index is the actual pointer to the object itself. So file objects have a certain structure in memory when they're open, and they keep state information. Process objects are the same. Thread objects are the same. These are all pointed to by the handle table. So once you find the handle table of a process or of the system that you're interested in, here's what it looks like. The very top member of that is a pointer to these arrays of objects. So that's what we were interested in with the FU2. Now this is an example of test.exe. Its process ID is 152. And it's a userland process that's trying to open an existing process by ID and then to terminate that process. So it makes a call to open process, and the ID it's looking for is 132. It gets back a handle in H process, Then it makes a call to terminate process with the handle of 3. 3 would be the handle to process 132. Terminate process actually does a call to ntdll.dll with a ZW terminate process. That transitions us into kernel mode. We now go through the system call table and we're into NT terminate process. This is an abstraction of how it works. It isn't the exact assembly. It isn't assembly level accurate, but it's an abstraction of how it would work conceptually. So we have to translate the handle into an object to begin with, because everything in the kernel operates upon the objects, not upon the handles. The handles are only used in order for user line processing, other threads and so forth, not to have access to the raw data. So it's an abstraction where you can implement your security reference monitor at one place, because since the other processes don't know the address of the object, they can't manipulate it themselves. So here, NT terminate process is going to look up a handle to the object for 03. What its goal is to get back the E process structure, and then it's going to make some calls on that. So translate handle to object will look up the current process by ID, which in this case we want 152. So we're going to go to process 152's handle table eventually. So you see there the first blue array that showed up, that is the handle tables, or that's all the processes. Here we're going to go to 152, and then we're going to go to its individual handle table, which is pointed to by the eProcess block of process 152. Within that, it's just a big array. We're going to go to offset 3, because that's the handle we're interested in. At offset 3 will be 2 things. One will be a pointer to the object, and the other will be the access mask. That's used by the security reference model. However, if you're a driver and you're just doing these decom tricks, you don't have to worry about the access mask. If you can parse these handle tables yourselves, which obviously Fu2 can do, then you can just wipe it out. That's what this slide shows. We just nulled out that entry. So in this case, we would go to the PSP CID table and just null out that object pointer. Therefore, next slide, people who brute force across PIDs or PROS-TIDs would not see us. This was the algorithm used by F-Secure's BlackHat. Anybody from F-Secure here? Don't throw anything at me, please. Last conference, they said they didn't know whether they wanted to shake my hand or hit me in the face. Luckily, they shook my hand because we were at dinner. So what they did was they brute forced over all the PIDs available. There's a limited range of process IDs that the system can use. So they just said open process, open process, open process, several thousand times over all the PID indexes. They would then get back a handle, and now they would have a handle to all the processes that were there. Then they would call another API like ZW Query System Information to get back a listing from the kernel of all the processes. They could compare the two lists, and if there was any discrepancies, then they know they have a hidden process. This is very effective. However, FU2 showed that this could be defeated as well. So now Peter's going to take over and explain how RAID goes about detecting all these different things.
All right. So this is the portion of the talk where we introduce the new ideas, design thoughts, implementations, and then do the demo. So bear with us, and we'll hopefully the payoff will be the demo, and you guys will like it or not. So RAID had, when we were thinking about designing this, RAID had a couple design thoughts. The first was we wanted it to be essentially a complete toolkit. We didn't want to force people to go to other tools because currently you got to take rootkit revealer, you might want a blacklight, you might want an SVV, and you just combine them and you run them and you see what happens, and you might get varying results. So the idea behind RAID was it's the one-stop shop. Another thing was we wanted to thwart application-specific attacks, and we came up with our own acronym that I'm not even going to bother to pronounce because it's really long. But we use our own secure communication channel. We do not use octals. We use a different method that's randomized, so no octal attacks will work, and you'd have to figure out how we're creating the shared memory segments before you could even think of messing with our communication. Another thought was RAID is not developed with a GUI. Doesn't require the .NET framework. If you think of Box's own, you drop the driver, you drop the console, and you go. The idea that you need to install the framework, reboot 3 times, download 200 megabytes on a machine you're trying to do forensic analysis is probably a poor idea. So RAID is, drop and go, which was one of the ideas. And finally, a unique idea we came up with is we wanted RAID to be for both Joe Schmo and the researcher. We want to offer features for the researcher to be able to do research and say this driver is this virus family or this rootkit. But we also want your mom to be able to say clean my system, and you won't get a phone call saying I just did something and I don't know what I did. Come home. So those are the 2 areas we were trying to go with RAID, and we tried to combine it into one tool. Real quick, RAID can run on Windows XP and XP Service Pack 2. Doesn't run on Vista. I didn't put that in the slide, but I don't even have Vista, so I can't even test it. Runs on Service Pack 4. It will give you a nice warning saying it hasn't been fully tested on Service Pack 4. If anyone wants to donate legal license keys to me, I'll develop it out further and put it on different operating systems. It does work on 2000 pre-Service Pack 1. Something changed in the kernel. I didn't have the time before the talk or the weeks before to fully work it out. So support for post-Service Pack 1 is in development and will be soon, out soon. All right, so the communication. Like I said, we came up with a new scheme. We used shared memory segments to thwart crappy and stupid application-specific attacks. These are your hacker, defender, your rootkits that are going to target your printfs and modify what you're printing out to the user, that kind of stuff. It really pains me to acknowledge they exist because it's just, it takes no thought to do that. So we just wanted to make their life a little harder. What we do is we use a shared memory segment that's shared between the userland and kernel. The shared memory segment has a random name, so it changes every time RAID is run, so they can't predict the name. And we use it to pass information back and forth, just like an octal. I can send a command, I can receive a request back, and I have my buffer filled out, just like octals, but without the potential vulnerabilities of octals. We also use, obviously we're also going to use randomly named events to communicate, signal back and forth between user and kernel. And finally, we'll talk about this further in the difference-based or cross-view comparison for process detection. What we're going to do is we're going to spawn a process from userland that our kernel driver initiates. So it's going to look like you double-clicked on it from userland. However, it's actually being spawned from the driver. It goes through explorer.exe. Anyone hooking a specific open or create process call from the driver will not see it. It looks exactly like every executable you ever run. It's a pretty neat way, and it's very unique the way we're doing it. And of course, the process is dumped on disk. It's not something copied. The process name is random. We randomize some things in there to keep them from preventing this process from spawning. So what is RAID not? This is an important slide here. RAID is not a replacement for common sense. If you get an email from your ex-girlfriend and she cheated on you, she probably doesn't want to be with you. And if the email says, I love you, as we saw with the love bug, there are a lot of people who are going to take that chance and download the file. Don't. It's not a replacement for common sense. RAID will not keep you rootkit free. I can't stress that enough. What we're doing with RAID is it's a cat and mouse game with rootkits. You've heard it at every talk almost on this track. We're showing our hand, essentially, detection-wise. We're detecting as much as we can. We're doing the best job we can. It's not foolproof. It won't be foolproof. The malware authors will always have the upper hand because they're going to always be one step ahead because they're going to see what we're doing.